Here are a few things you should consider before redesigning a stairway. And of course, this video is going to be dedicated to stairways that are already unsafe. So this would be a stairway with a steep riser, something over 8 inches, something that wouldn't meet local building codes, and steps that are less than 10 inches for residential, less than 11 inches for commercial and public stairways. So if you have a stairway that is a little steep and it's unsafe, and you'd like to make it longer and add a few steps to it, there will be a few things you will need to know about before you do it. First off, let's start with the bottom. Are you actually going to have enough room to make it longer? Is there a wall in the way? Will the stairway be protruding into an area that will create another safety hazard? For example, if you have a hallway like we have here, the stairway cannot protrude into the hallway unless the minimum width on the hallway, or unless the hallway is not at the minimum width. Now keep in mind, most of these problems start with the fact that the space is limited. Otherwise, the stairway would have been built longer to begin with. So these are the problems you're going to be facing, and most of the time there's not going to be much you can do with the stairway. I've seen this happen plenty of times, and I'm not saying you can't do anything with it, but a project that you might be thinking, hey, I can do this for a couple $100 might end up costing thousands. So keep that in mind when it comes to fixing something like this. Another obstacle that could be in the way will be a door or a window. If the stairway, if you have a situation like this, the stairway can be lengthened relatively easy. You can get rid of the window, if of course you can. You could make it smaller, but don't forget that stairways do have building codes. If they get around windows, they might need to be tempered or some type of safety glass. Next up, let's take a look at the top. If you cannot expand the stairway into the bottom, you might be able to expand it into the top. But this will require a lot more work most of the time, because you're going to be getting into the framing, the floor framing and stuff like that. That could be a big headache, and it might not be worth doing. And again, you're going to have the same situation. You need to make sure you're going to have enough room to expand the stairway. Most stairways require a 3-foot area at the top and the bottom, unobstructed area. So that would be a 3-foot by 3-foot square at the top and the bottom. Let's take a look at what the stairway would look like after you expanded it, made it a little longer. You could have a stairway that would stick out at the bottom and would be even at the top. And again, I'm trying to give you some ideas. Sometimes people can't grasp the concept of why I'm making the video. And the whole point in this would to actually make the stairway longer. The steps would need to be wider. If you had a 9-inch step, let's say, and you needed to add an inch to each step to make 10-inch steps, and you have 13 steps, it's going to bring the stairway out an additional 13 inches. And again, like I said, if you can do it, great. If you can't, because there's an obstacle in the way, then you will not be able to do this. But expanding it on the bottom is going to probably be your best bet. Going into the top could create problems with the framing. Here's what it would look like if you started at the bottom and expanded the stairway into the top. And of course, you can see this again, you would be adding another 13 inches if you had 13 steps to the top of the stairway. And here you have the silhouette, you can kind of see it, of the other stairway. You can see it's a little steeper, and this one here is going to be a little longer, and of course at less of an angle. So let's say you might have a stairway that's 40 degrees, and then you install your new stairway. It's going to be 36 degrees. It might not sound like much, but it can make all the difference in the world. There is nothing worse than using a stairway that has tall risers and small steps on a regular basis, eventually, and I hate to say it, but eventually someone is going to fall down that stairway. And that, of course, is the reason why these building codes are in place, and they are for safety. And I totally agree with all these building codes here, because I have built plenty of stairs, and I have had to build some unsafe stairs every once in a while going up to an attic. Something that's not going to be used every day might not be as big of a problem. And when I say that, it really doesn't matter. If you use a stairway on a regular basis, you're increasing your chances, and it's just a percentage thing there. If you use it 100 times a day, you're increasing your chances. You use it 1 time a day, you're decreasing your chances. But it doesn't really matter. When one person falls down that stairway, whether they use it 100 times or 1 time, it's going to create a problem most of the time. So any injury, especially if it led to a death, would be that'd be a horrible thing to even think about. And stairways like these, sometimes it's going to be worth it to pay the extra dollars to redesign the stairway and actually make it safe. Now, before you tear into the upper area of the floor framing, there will be a few things you will need to consider, and I mean consider. The first off is the structure of the framing. You might not even be able to do it because of the way the floor is built. Second up will be any pipes that are in the way, electrical wires, or heating and air conditioning ducts. This could also be a problem, and this is all something you're going to actually need to check before you expand the stairway into the floor, the upper floor instead of the lower floor. Now, you could run into some structural beams. You could have a structural beam that is supporting a load-bearing wall above. And this beam probably will not be able to be moved. And if it does, of course, it's going to require an engineer. Keep in mind that any modifications you make to an existing wood-framed floor will require a structural engineer. If you know enough about construction, you might be able to get away with it. But for those of you who don't, I would suggest hiring somebody who did. Just don't go in. And this is where a lot of problems come in. Someone just comes in, hey, I'm going to make my stairway longer, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this and tie it back into here. And then, and I see this all the time. They'll cut the boards. The joists. They will maybe build a wall underneath it or put a post underneath it, the supporting area. But there's no footing underneath that. So it's kind of like when the load transfers, it's got to transfer from one area to another. So I see that a lot. Someone will come in and they create a problem with the structure of the house, the integrity of the house, because they didn't continue with the load transfer. It just stops and then creates problems for the rest of the building later. Now, the joist can run in either direction. You could actually have something like this, a situation like this, and you could cut this and put a doubler here and then move it back, put a head out across here and then put some type of a post in here or a wall with a footing underneath it, and you could probably be okay with that. But again, like I said, structural engineers might be the best way here. And I've already went a little long on this video, so I hope it helps. If it does, don't forget to hit the old thumbs up button. And it is off to the next video.